Joining me now, Clint Watts, a former FBI special agent, author of the book Messing with the Enemy, Surviving in a Social Media World of Hackers, Terrorists, Russians, and Fake News. Clint, you're the very person I want to talk to about all of this. First of all, from my reporting and my understanding of the intel community, Chris Wray was absolutely telling the truth, that Russia is the active player in this year's election. China is aspirational and is doing other things, hacking, economic hacking. But tell me if I'm wrong about that.
No, Andrea, you're absolutely correct, and so is Director Wray. I thought his message was directly on point, and he articulated it perfectly. Russia is running the same playbook that they did in 2016, and they're doing it in 2020. The one exception, which Director Wray noted, is there hasn't been the noted electoral system hacking or voter roll hacking that we saw in 2016. I've not seen public reporting of it, and he did not articulate that yesterday. Separately, the notion around China does influence and interference, but when it comes to elections, they tend to do that overseas. Look to places like Taiwan or potentially Australia or New Zealand. China's influence efforts right now focus on COVID-19, where the source of it is, what the response of it is, and denigrating the U.S. in that context. It focuses on Huawei and TikTok, the battle over big tech, and trade. And across the board and around the world, China's doing all sorts of influence efforts, but they have little interest really in the election in November. That's because it's not entirely clear what they would gain from a Biden administration or a Trump administration, and it really doesn't matter. They don't have a bridge into the U.S. the way that Russia does. Russia very much sees Trump's victory in election as good to their long-term interest, and a Biden victory as negative to their interest.
Of course, there's no way to tell but what the motive here is, but it just seems that since the change of leadership at National Intelligence, with Radcliffe now there, who is such a loyalist to the president, what the guidance we're getting, the lack of briefings for the intel committees, the fact that this threat hearing was only held on the Democratic House side, not on the Senate side, and wasn't held in February, and didn't have the DNI, the CIA director, NSA, DEA, all the agencies would be lined up once a year. That's when Dan Coats got into trouble by telling the truth, and a month later he was fired. So it just seems like everything is being twisted at the highest level of the intelligence community as well to satisfy the president.
That's absolutely the case, Andrea. When you look at what the DNI Ratcliffe has said, even about election interference, they conflate two issues into one. Ratcliffe said everyone knows China is the bigger national security threat, but that's not the question of this hearing. The question of this hearing is, what do we see in terms of electoral interference? And Russia is 10 times in scale. They are doing it overtly in their media. There's no reason to suppress this intelligence. You could actually just read overt Russian state news and know that they want President Trump reelected. You could also read overt Russian state news and realize they are playing up conspiracies around mail-in balloting, electoral fraud. They're trying to essentially subvert our democracy by replaying narratives that come out of the White House back into the U.S. audience space. That doesn't even go to the covert shutdowns we've seen. Microsoft reporting hacking attempts from Russia just this past week against the campaigns. You've seen social media accounts being taken down that are stemming from Russia and the internet troll farm. So all of this is a replay of 2016, and it's publicly available here in 2020. I don't know why the intel community would even try and suppress those briefings. I don't think the people really at the worker level want those suppressed.
And then on Antifa, Chris Wray also got, crosswise with the White House, with the president specifically about Antifa and whether or not that is the biggest threat in terms of the protests.
Yeah, I thought he did a remarkable job in navigating that yesterday. He said, yes, Antifa is a movement. There are some core members of Antifa, but the scale of it is not particularly large. And not all protests have something to do with Antifa. The message out of the White House, and for political reasons during this election season, is to convince large parts of the country that all of the protest movements that you see out there are part of some centralized organization. And I thought Director Wray did a good job of sort of dispelling that yesterday, saying, yes, Antifa is a movement. But we could probably look to other parts of the political spectrum, particularly on the white supremacy end, and identify groups that are far more organized, far more militant, more mobilizing towards violence, and using social media and showing up at places like protests. So Antifa has always been sort of a selection bias by the White House. Do they exist? Yes, as a movement they do. But in terms of scale and severity, it just really doesn't match up to what we're seeing on the far right political spectrum.
Clint Watts, thanks so much. We really appreciate your expertise. Thanks for being with us. We're going to stay on it. Hope you'll join us again.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.